Well, hello everyone and welcome. I'm Cooper Naylor, and today this is probably one of the biggest interviews I've ever done. And I've got a mayoral candidate of Hartselle, Alabama, Missy Evans. Now, to begin, I will say I'm not a resident of Hartselle, Alabama, so I can't vote in this election. But
Yes.
but what I wanted to do was, and I've reached out to all three candidates. Missy is the only one who's gotten back to me so far for all three candidates for mayor of Hartselle, Alabama, and basically give a voice to all three candidates and give you an idea of who is running for mayor of Hartselle, Alabama. So, like I said, I have no preference in this election. I'm just giving you all the candidates and showing you who they are and letting them have a chance to come on and talk. So, today, what I have is a bunch of questions I've lined up. I've also got one question from a person from Facebook who is a resident of Hartselle who wants to ask a question, which is important for any election, is to get the people's voice heard as well. So, what I want to start with, start with that question from the viewer, and that is from a lady named Callie Miller, and this was from our Facebook post. She posted, I would love to know how she plans to support all of our schools, but specifically our elementary schools.
Great. Okay. Well, first of all, let me just say, Cooper, thank you for letting me have a chance to be on your podcast. It's so exciting to see young people with ingenuity and entrepreneurial interest launching out in this way. And allows us older folk to feel very excited about our future because we know we're in good hands. And I appreciate you inviting me on your show. Um, I am really enjoying the process you mentioned about getting to know people, and I'm enjoying this process of doing a lot of listening and learning from the people of Hartselle, as well as I'm discovering that one of the most important roles as mayor is to be in a role of educating and teaching others about what does it look like, what do representatives in a government for the people look like. And so as a mayor, a lot of what I do is to clear up misconceptions and to help highlight important things that are happening in our city and how we can partner together and get things done. So, to address Callie's question here, thank you, Callie, for submitting this. My plans to support all of our schools, but specifically our elementary schools. Well, first and foremost, the role of a city government and is to work in partnership with all of the organizations within our city. Um, our schools are, as many like to quote and say, are the crown jewel of our community. We recognize that young families come and make their home here in Hartselle because of our schools. And therefore, we need to be 100% walking lock and step with the Hartselle City Schools, not only their board, but also their staff. That includes the staff at the central office, but also our principals. That looks like helping them to accomplish their goals by working with them to secure funding when they need it for building projects. You have seen recently that the schools undertook completely demolishing and rebuilding Crestline Elementary, and that was a great asset to our city. And they are working on a project right now at Barkley Bridge to expand their gym and recreational spaces for their students, to bring those facilities up to date and to better serve our schools. The other thing that we can do is to make, as a city, obviously the city is not the school board. We can't really address things like curriculum needs and those day-to-day administrative functions of the school and the school board. But one of the things we can do is to create a community that is equally desirable for our young families that are coming here and enrolling their children in our schools. What I mean by that is we frequently as a community lean on our schools to be the attractor for Hartselle. And uh, we have more than school-aged families here. We have senior adults. We have young professionals that are seeking to make our community their home. And so we don't want to solely lean on our schools to be the only reason why we are a shining city here in North Alabama. We want our park and recs to be top notch and keeping lock and step with our schools so that when our young students are beginning to explore what sports look like and the way that sports play an important role in their character development and in their ability to learn how to work with team, work in a team and to work under the leadership of someone other than their parents. We want to make sure our facilities are top notch. And even beyond that, that our programs are such that our best athletes want to play right here in Hartselle. We also want to make sure that that the other things that we have for our young families allow our students to explore other activities. I know just from my experience with you, Cooper, that you've got interests with 4-H and you've got other experiences that are not just baseball and soccer. And we want to make sure that students have the opportunity to explore all those interests, whether they be the arts or other activities that maybe aren't just in that narrow box. And so making sure our park and recs and our library systems and things like that support what the schools are providing for our students. And as I already said, it is important that we are working in a very close relationships with our schools, that when our schools come to us with needs, that we're doing the best that we can to provide green lights for them and to help them to meet their goals without any roadblocks on the part of the city.
All right. And as I can say, this was something that they wanted to know. So I just thought I would start with that question.
That's great.
Um, so let's begin with also, you were the president of the Chamber of Commerce. Now, I
That's
did
right.
do an impact program when you were a part of the Chamber of Commerce. How would that role as the president of the Chamber of Commerce help you with being the mayor if you are elected?
Yeah. Well, this is a great way to compare and contrast a little bit. So, the chamber is actually contracted by the city to be the marketing arm of the city, meaning that our primary responsibility as the chamber for the city, for the allocation that they provided for us, was to get the word out about who Hartselle was. Both, I like to say we like to market internally to our residents so that they have pride about living here and they know what's going on. We're also working to provide programming that just improves the quality of life for our residents. We also market outside into our surrounding areas so that they can take advantage and bring their tax buying powers here and shop in our stores and eat in our restaurants so that Hartselle is stronger for that, and we also just can be a something that others can lean on for those services. And then thirdly, like we want to market even throughout our region so that people are making choices to be tourists here, to come to our depot days, to enjoy our downtown, which is somewhat of a tourist destination. So that work is not done in a silo. We have to lean on many of our elected officials at the state level and even the federal level to accomplish those things. We received many grants along the way to support the work that we did. And because of that, I was able to develop close relationships. Those numbers are right there in my cell phone, and I regularly speak to them even now about the future of Hartselle and how we can partner well with that. Also, I regularly interacted with the staff and the elected officials in the city in the 4 years that I was the director of the chamber, because again, we have to work in a close partnership. Worked um, with the Hartselle Beautification Association and with the Morgan County Economic Development Association. I sat on their executive board. I worked with the Decatur Visitors Bureau, or the Tourism Bureau, who also serves Hartselle as well. And we had many programs and many initiatives that we could not do alone. So that is one of the ways that that work has prepared me to serve as the mayor of Hartselle, and also just the people that I have met through that work. You know, we were here to serve the community, and that meant working in our schools. As you mentioned, being a part of our impact program, we did several things to grow student leaders in our area, and that was just one of them. We also did work with many of our volunteer organizations like Kiwanis and Rotary, and with church leaders with our Serve Day program. So my network, just by the sheer nature of what I did, grew very wide, and working with real estate agents and our ambassador program. So, and those are exactly the same relationships that we will need to continue to foster in order to be the kind of city that we all have hopes and dreams for.
All right. Um. Also, in speaking with the Chamber of Commerce, I know that sometimes there has to be relationships with other cities that are around, like neighbor Hartsel as well. So I know, what is going to be like your relationship with surrounding cities such as Decatur, Decatur and Moulton, Coleman, all the
Yeah,
surrounding
yeah.
cities. How
That's
is your relationship going to be with that?
that's great. And again, those are relationships that I already formed while I was at the chamber. Relationships with the mayor of Falkville, and the community leaders in Danville, and leaders in Decatur. Obviously, our Morgan County is what is closest to us, Priceville as well, and moving forward, I'm just pausing to collect my thoughts a little bit on that. But one of the things that I think is really just amazing about the state of Alabama is how well they partner throughout the whole state and encourage this type of connectivity. I know that I have personal friends all throughout this state that serve as mayors and chamber of commerce leaders who are constantly asking, how can I help? How can we exchange ideas? And I believe the state of Alabama does a fantastic job of facilitating that with forums and different councils. Right here in Morgan County, there's already a coalition of mayors that meet on a regular basis alongside of our state representatives and state senators in order to, and even federal level, to say, hey, what can we be doing about our interstate system and our connective roads, and how can we be working together to improve our infrastructure? Because we can't just improve a road and then at the city line it just ends. We've got to be thinking globally about those things, and so those relationships need to be really tight, especially with our county commission and with our surrounding cities, because the growth that's happening right now in North Alabama is not happening strictly within the boundary lines of Huntsville. Their growth is impacting all of us, and we've got to have that global mindset and be, making sure that those relationships are really tight so that we're all benefiting. They say, rising tide raises all ships. And so as we're seeing some of our neighboring cities grow and even our growth, it's inspiring others. And we want to continue to work together on that.
So speaking of growth, I know as someone who's a young person right now that lives in this little area,
Mhm.
there's sometimes on like a Friday or Saturday night, there's not like a whole lot to find in Hartselle. So as mayor, what do you think you could, as far as like entertainment? Because I know one thing, to bring an example, like the theater there in Decatur, if you want to go to a movie that is after like 6 o'clock at night, you have to have someone that's 21 or over. And I know there's a bunch of people that's like 16, like that 16 to 20-year-old range, that would be responsible enough. So would that be something, or is there something else entertainment wise that you can get in Hartselle for someone like me who wants something to do on those Friday or Saturday nights?
Yeah, yeah. Those are tough questions. They're things that we sought to address at the chamber. We formed a young professionals organization, and really that was kind of their task, is how do we create a community where young professionals are eager to come, stay, build their life here, feel like they've got an excellent quality of life. And I think a lot of those questions still remain unanswered. Some of those issues relate to housing. It's difficult for young professionals to come here and to find housing that can meet their budget while they're, growing their careers, or even that have neighbors that would be of their same mindset. And so I think that's one thing that we need to consider, is how can we help meet that need for our young professionals. But also, I hear what you're saying, and the role of the city, again, is to work with the organizations, make, as I used the analogy earlier, just make sure the organizations that have those ambitions are getting green lights at City Hall, that when people come in with ideas, that we're saying yes, and that we're finding ways to work with them, that we're helping connect them with the resources and the people to help them get those things done. Um, we don't really have a department in the city to do that, because the city's focus is more on infrastructure and more on making sure that the daily functions of the city are running well: police, fire, public works. But we sure have an incredible chamber of commerce that, if they're well resourced, well staffed, have the volunteer base that they need, they can do a lot of those things in a really effective way. So I just see the city as playing a role of helping those groups. Number one, helping to encourage more volunteerism. And then secondly, helping to make sure that those groups are well resourced and are able to be successful.
So, on a different topic, I know another major issue that is going on right now in Hartselle is that is a lot of traffic,
Hmm.
and especially downtown, especially around lunchtime or when people are getting off of work. There downtown, it can be really congested, especially if you got to wait behind a train to get on either side of
Yes.
36. It's really
Yes.
congested.
Yes.
So I know you've talked before about the traffic issue. What, and I know you mentioned about Vaughn Bridge Road being like there was something they had that they were going to look at. So can you like go further into that?
Yeah, well, I made that video, what was that, about a week or so ago, and it was really answering a prompt. What's a project I want to finish? And I have been a part of this community for almost 35 years, and I have been hearing about these, potential bypasses and ways to get around the train, or just to alleviate traffic downtown, for almost that many years. And just doing my research, I discovered that there were some viable options that came forward as early as 2001. So we're talking nearly 25 years ago. They were starting to have some very serious conversations about this, in a way that they actually developed a fourfold plan for this. And part of that plan was somehow, and I don't know the specifics because I've never seen those plans, was for it to connect all the way to Vaughan Bridge Road. And I have imaginations about how that could have happened. But over the course of 25 years, because those plans did not come to fruition, land has been purchased and homes have been built, businesses have taken possibly some lots that were empty at the time that would have been easier for the city to procure, to make those kind of things happen. But obviously those plans are not what the future plans will be. And currently, I think it was about 18 months or 2 years ago, I mentioned earlier the partnerships with mayors in the area. Well, there was a group that was called together under the leadership of Arthur Orr. Um, I think this was back in 2023, like November of 23, in order to get back to the table and start figuring some of this out. Some of the ideas that were presented was to actually initiate the opening of another interstate exit at Bethel Road. And the idea was to, create a bypass that would use Bethel Road, enable people to get back onto that Longhorn Pass, and then access 31 using those channels. Now, what is difficult about that is the price tag. We're talking tens of millions of dollars for that type of work. Does that mean it can't happen? No, it just means that people are going to have to be really serious about advocating for this and coming up with a plan that has the least amount of impact on our community. Because there will be people who will be called upon to say, hey, can we purchase your land? Can we find a workaround here? And so those things will just have to be considered at that cost. The word is return on investment. Do we have a great enough return on investment to invest this type of cost in that roadway? In my opinion, I think that whether it be that plan or another, it's just time to get a project like this done. They are projecting that the traffic on Highway 36 as a bypass from 65 all the way to 31, that bypass, I'm calling it a bypass. It's not a bypass. It's a state road. State Road 36 will more than double in traffic over the next 25 years. And we need to be proactive about thinking about a plan for that. And Hartselle we are in a growth pattern. We have seen significant growth over the last 10 years, and our schools are a big part of that. We've got young families that are lining up to come, and we need to be careful about those things.
And I know talking about State Road 36, it goes right through downtown. And I know one thing that you mentioned about growth is your downtown scene. And what do you think? Is there anything you can do to bolster the downtown scene that already has some interesting things? But what else can be brought into the downtown area?
Yeah. Well, let me just go back and reiterate again. The role of the city is to make sure that that we've got the organizational. I'm using the word infrastructure, but infrastructure is such a broad word, and I think most of our minds go to infrastructure meaning roads and bridges and ditches and ways to carry water and power lines, and those are essential. I mean, those are obviously those physical infrastructures, but infrastructure also is related to organizations that support our quality of life. Schools are part of that infrastructure, but also one of the things that Hartselle would benefit from is having an organization that is tasked on a regular, ongoing basis with the care and the upkeep of downtown. The city of Hartselle has many boards that work at different levels of functionality, meaning that we have some that are very engaged and very active and serving at a high level. We have some that might need a little revitalization because they have grown perhaps defunct, but we don't have a board or an organization currently that serves as a downtown advocacy group. Now, back when I was at the chamber, we began a nonprofit organization called the Downtown Hartselle Business League, and that was a membership-based organization with a four-point approach that followed the Main Street Alabama organization. We were learning from them. We were not associated with that organization, but learning from them, and it focused on um, how do we promote downtown? How do we help with organizing and getting our downtown merchants and business and property owners talking on a regular basis? And how are we helping them to keep rents low and keep the profile of the businesses that would be successful down there? If we have 10 merchants that all want to open the same shop, then no one's going to be successful. And, you know, people certainly have the autonomy to open any business that they want, but having an organization that can come along and just coach and advise and help those startup businesses. Also, within that organization, having regular resources that come in and help. So anyway, all that to say, we beautification is part of that too, just regularly helping to upkeep these older buildings and going after grants for that, going to the city and requesting allocations and funding for that. But imagine what a difference we would have if we had someone working full time on our downtown. Now, does that mean that all of a sudden we're going to have bus loads of people there every day? Not necessarily, but it would put us in a better position to win. And so all that to say, as a mayor, that's my interest. My interest is helping to see organizations like that thrive and encouraging them, helping them to have all the resources that we could provide for them, within limits, of course. And a lot of those decisions are made not just at the mayor's office, they're made in partnership with the city council. But, being able to advocate for them with the city council to help those kinds of things happen. I've also just recently in all of my meetings with people and talking, I hear some great ideas from people. What can we do to help entrepreneurs? I know the chamber is currently working on developing an incubator program for small businesses. We've got ideas coming out of some of our Main Street merchants about, hey, could we write up sort of a plan to help boost first year businesses that want to set up shop on Main Street, where they could come in and be rent free for a period, and even help to kind of tier their expenses, because there's so much upfront expense in a first year business. And these are fabulous ideas, and whether those things need to be followed through at the mayor's office and with the city council, or again, helping that downtown area develop a strong organization that can help with those things. We want to explore those options.
All right,
And
we're
I'll just say this too, Cooper. And this is just kind of a mantra that I've had, is that we have to remember that our downtown is so essential to our identity as a city. Now, they'll never be a great money generator like Walmart is. We don't have shops downtown anymore that function as the five and dimes used to, or used to be our dry goods as it used to be in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But we still have a responsibility to steward that as a historic identifier for our community, and position it so that it can be an attractor for our for our tourists, and it can just be the absolute best that it can be.
all right. I want to get to one final question, and this probably may be one of the most major things you've been talking about in your platform, and that is transparency. As the city, I know that there has been a lot of city council meetings you brought up that there's not been a lot of information given out to the residents of the city. So, as mayor, how will you bring more transparency from City Hall to everyday working residents of Hartselle?
Yes, right. Well, I think the first thing is it's a mindset. We can't be afraid of messiness in the sense of, when you begin to, and I've seen this through all my years of doing nonprofit work. Nonprofits, the greatest asset that we have is not money, it's people, it's ideas, it's the volunteers that make up a nonprofit. And when you start dealing with people at that level, it gets a little messy, it gets a little emotional, and those are sometimes things that can look like we're not being efficient. But the reality is that we are only as good as the next idea and we are, oh my goodness, our city is just rich with creativity, and it's my core belief that every problem that we have right here in Hartselle can be solved with the ingenuity and the creativity of the people right here. And so it's important that we're giving them a voice. I mentioned earlier about task forces, or excuse me, boards, and I think that's one of the things that I'm passionate about is making sure our boards are as healthy as they can be, that they are really functioning in a way that is providing us with the kind of feedback that we need to make representative decisions for our city. I also think another part of that is making the information more accessible to people through live streaming our city council meetings, through regular mayoral updates. I even just get excited about a vision of having regular town halls, breaking our city into the different neighborhoods that they are, already just sort of affiliate and assimilate with, and being able to go in and just say, hey, I need to know what's working, what's not. Bring some of our department leaders in to really hear people, because I think that will also change their approach to things once they, hear. Now, that also includes starting task forces. You've already mentioned, hey, how powerful could it be if we could get a task force together of young adults and just say, what are some things that we could do? What is one thing that we could work on in 2025 that would make a significant difference for our young people? Bringing in a student leadership team that, what's one thing that we could do for our schools or for, your quality of life, bringing a senior team in, again, just sort of asking those questions and doing a lot of listening. But, I'll say it again. When you choose to govern that way, it is going to be, it's going to be a little messy. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth being, having a much wider door. I've just, in all my leadership training, I've learned you have lots of voices, and you have those really loud voices, and then all the way down to those really soft and quiet voices. And the soft and quiet voices are the ones that often you need to be listening to the most, but they need to feel empowered to speak just as much as the sounding gong.
All right. So one last thing I want is to give you a chance, if you have a final statement to all the voters of why you should be considered for their vote for mayor, then this is your opportunity to give a little statement to the voters.
All right. Well, I haven't really prepared anything, but I'll just say that, one of my core values that is um, just the power of people, and I have demonstrated over and over again that I am a leader who listens. I am, and more than I listen, I assimilate what you say. And it is a discipline to submit your own interests and desires to the voice of the people, and that is something that you can absolutely be guaranteed that you will receive from me. And when I say that it's a discipline, it means that I'm going to have to take what I want and shelf it and listen to what you want and make it preeminent, is the word I like to use. The other thing I'd like to say is that and I use this as a catchphrase, audaciously optimistic about Hartselle. And that is driving a lot of the reason why I'm running, because I believe in Hartselle and I believe that there is so much potential here. And I just am excited about serving in a role where I can help facilitate that. And then just lastly, I'll say that I also recognize that I'm not going to get every dream and desire in my heart for this city done in the next 4 years. But my obligation is to be what I like to call a baton carrier. There will be a transition in leadership this year. I'm absolutely confident of that. Whether that means I'm in the mayor's seat, or we continue to have our current incumbent mayor, or someone, the city council, the school board, all of that is going to change. And so it is our responsibility to pick up the baton that's passed to us and to take it with all of our strength to the next leg of this race. And that's what you can count on from me. I will run strong. I will run hard. And at the end of my race, I will make sure that we haven't lost ground and that we've gained ground, so that we can all be really proud of this community that we live in.
Well, folks, we want to say thank you to Missy Evans for coming on. And if you support her, then, the election is August 26th for mayor. And I believe polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct. And if you haven't registered to vote yet, you need to take care of that. You can do it real easy by going to the Secretary of State's website, SOS, Secretary of State, for the state of Alabama, and just get that registration taken care of by August 11th. You just go right online, fill out the information. They need a couple weeks to process it to make sure you're on the roll. But if you get that done here within the first 2 weeks of the month of August, you will be golden and show up at your polls and get your voting taken care of. You can let me also say, Cooper, you can pick up absentee ballots at the city hall, and you don't even have to take it home. You can walk in, vote right there on the spot, and get that done, that early voting done.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And I just hope this will help the community get a little more sense of who you are and who they're voting for. So, folks, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you later. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Cooper. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.